SDR is looking to kill it, the best way that you can do that is by making sure you have an understanding of the metrics and that you leverage them to understand potentially where the gaps are, where you need to be better, and then take that to really reach the goals that's set.
Hey everybody, this is Morgan J. Ingram here, host of the SDR Chronicles, providing you guys with motivational tips, strategic outlook, sales development leaders, sales development practitioners, getting you prepared for your sales development role, your sales role, and as a sales leader. And so I'm super excited today because I have Mary from Amplify. She's killing the game. She knows stuff about sales development. She's going to talk about metrics and more clear cut, how to leverage the metrics to be successful in your role. So guys, get super fired up. She's really excited to be on here. I'm excited, as you guys can already tell. And without any further ado, I'm going to let Mary introduce herself as we go into the topic of the day.
Morgan, thank you so much. I'm a big fan, I have to say, before I talk a little bit about myself. I had listened to some of your episodes prior to, but spent a little bit more time just in preparation. And I was amazed at how I was kind of taking notes for myself for this session, but I also had a ton of notes just for my everyday role and the things that I'm doing within my own, with my own company and all that. So you're doing a great job, and I'm really excited to be a part of just the session today. So as Morgan mentioned, I am Director of Sales Development at Amplify. We are a tech company out in Indianapolis. Specifically, we are in the employee engagement space. So we help HR leaders pinpoint exactly what's causing problems or conflict within culture and engagement with their people. So specifically, I lead our sales development team. I'm one of our sales leaders within the organization. And it's just been a really exciting gig for me. Prior to, I worked for about 8 years in a company that did outsourced lead generation. So kind of a little bit of a different perspective on prospecting from more of a consultant standpoint. And by the time I'd left the company, I had run operations and pretty much done every role. So have a pretty multifaceted view of the role itself. And I've also just gotten really passionate about it. I've just seen some really cool outcomes from specifically doing that. And then lastly, I'm a big fan of AAISP. Morgan, I know that you're familiar with that organization, national organization that basically helps to further the development of the inside sales industry as a whole. I am our chapter president here in Indy.
Awesome. Well, there you go. Mary's an all-star. So let's go into it. So when people think of metrics, people start snoozing, they get bored. So Mary, why are you excited about the metrics today? What brings us to this point?
Great point, Morgan. I completely agree with you. I think that metrics can easily just be viewed as kind of this black hole. I've become very passionate about metrics in particular because I've just through the experience I've had found a way to understand that metrics is really what gives you a leg up, whether that's as an individual SDR or as a manager. And it's the fastest way to just get more information. And it's faster than just getting feedback from one rep. It's a faster way to identify trends. So at the end of the day, if you are, a manager who's looking to, further just the growth of your team, or an individual SDR who's looking to kill it, the best way that you can do that is by making sure you have an understanding of the metrics and that you leverage them to understand potentially where the gaps are, where you need to be better, and then take that to really reach the goals that's set forth. So that it's just been immensely valuable to me from a success standpoint, and being able to kind of go from one level to the next.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so when you kind of look at the metrics, let's kind of go back into when you were a rep. As a rep, did you pay attention to the metrics, or was it something that you weren't paying attention to the metrics that you decided, hey, I need to pay more attention to the metrics? How did that become a fiery passion?
Yeah, so actually the latter. I was in a position, definitely been an SDR back in my day and was grinding through calls and getting in more instances where I was more frustrated. of just, why am I not getting more? Why am I not the leader of the team in terms of these numbers? And, you know, I love the point you're making, because what I did is I asked my manager, I want to try to get more proactive about what might be occurring with my own call metrics and understand how I can get better. And that's really where it started. And, you know, part of that is making sure you have a technology that can show you the right stuff. But I've done this with several technologies. It's just making sure you can set them up in a way so that you can get what you need and then act from it. So it was a big just window of opportunity for me to help my own performance. And then from there, that grew into, wow, I'm really helping clients do better with their metrics from an SDR perspective. I'm helping individual SDRs, and from them on.
That's really awesome. So what was out of all those metrics, what was the most impactful metric for you to evaluate for yourself as a rep? As a rep,
and this would probably be the same answer as a manager. It was my conversation metrics. So what I mean by that is, at a minimum, your activity metrics have to be in line. So, you know, I'm a really big fan of breaking down, here's where I need to be with revenue, how many appointments do I need to book for that? Okay, hence that goes into how many calls I have to make. So those activity metrics are still important, but as an individual rep, what helped me more was getting a better understanding of what was occurring for me on the conversations that I was having. So, you know, we had kind of call metrics. So we had kind of a bucket of outcomes that needed to be logged after a call was finished. So I'll give an example. If I am, you know, calling a new prospect, and by the end of that, it's someone who just tells me they're not interested. Of course, I've, you know, made sure that I've done the right objection handling, and we fought a little bit. But if somebody is still at the end of the day and no interest, I'm going to log that as such. Now, but where that becomes really compelling is where I can look at, okay, of all the conversations that I've had in a week, what percentage of those are no interest? So, you know, I eventually got to a point where I knew in order to hit my goal, that no interest percentage had to be in a certain range. So if I was, you know, if I had a week where it was like 40% instead of 20, then I kind of knew exactly where I needed to pinpoint to gain understanding of what's causing me to get no interest. And then I can make decisions from there.
Right. And then as a manager, as a leader now, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it really is. And it's not, you know, it always amazes me because I'd love to be sitting here saying it's this glamorous process, but it's really just finding a way to make sense of the metrics. So what I'm really looking for across my team is, where do we stand with no interest? Where do we stand with just data metrics? So when I say data, like, I'm kind of talking about the lists of the people in the companies. Do I have too many instances where somebody is telling me, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not the right person? Is that where it should be? Do I have enough that I'm logging as follow-up? So, you know, the other part of being an SDR is I'm trying to nurture so that I've got a pool of people that I know I'm going to call back. And that needs to be of a certain percentage for me to be building a large enough pipeline, you know, running just like a sales organization. So that piece. So when I can see that as a manager, what I start to see is trends across my team. And it also becomes just really integral. And if I'm going too deep with this, let me know.
No, you're good.
Cool. So it also becomes really integral in just working with the marketing team. So, you know, when I first came to Amplify, you know, first they've got a fantastic, very agile marketing team, which has been great to work with. And they're helping us support a lot of different campaigns for the SDR team. So we might be doing webinars and trade shows and other events. And although they were doing a really good job of looking at the overall metrics afterwards, I'm coming in and actually being able to tell them metrics like during the process. So when we're in an instance where maybe we're trying out a new event, on day 3 of calls, I can turn around and say, wow, for some reason with this group, our no interest is sky high, and here's why. And so we need to message to them differently. So, you know, really, and this is the piece I get excited about, where metrics just become even more just fascinating, is that they can help other departments who are planning around sales activities and all that jazz. So I want to make sure I'm getting kind of tactical enough with the example here so that's clear, but it's definitely not rocket science, I'll tell you that.
For sure. And the thing I liked is that you talked about the patterns, right? Of like, hey, look, at call 3, this isn't working. At call 2, this isn't working. So can you talk about the different talk tracks around your different personas that you have and why that's important for your reps that you're kind of talking about these metrics of calls?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Morgan, I'm gonna make sure I understand your question. So do you want me to dive a little bit deeper about how the message can change per persona?
Like obviously, for example, like here at Terminus, like when I used to call like a CMO versus a marketing operations manager, it's gonna be a completely different message and it's gonna be a completely different talk track, and the metrics around that are gonna be different. So kind of talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give kind of the example of how we look at it with Amplify, kind of the 2 buyer groups that we have, and they've done a great job of spending a lot of time and really crafting out those buying personas, but mostly we're selling to either HR or we're selling to kind of an executive person, whether it's president or owner or CEO. And so where the metrics become even more important, say like early on in a campaign like that, is when we're trying something new. As an example, kind of one trend that we've seen is HR seems to be going well, but there's also a lot of instances where they can't get maybe the CEO involved. So we're starting to go just direct to the CEO. And we're starting with a message or a call track that, we think is going to work with them. So we're kind of putting our best assumptions forward on the front end. And then kind of going to market with that. So for CEOs specifically, when I focus on messaging for an SDR team, I focus a lot on the pain of what they're facing, and I kind of leave it up to my team to be able to bring some of their personality into that. But very common for us is, hey, we work with other CEOs like you. They knew they were probably doing a lot of different things for culture and engagement, but honestly, they couldn't put their finger on maybe what was working best, or they wanted to find different outcomes that they weren't seeing today. And so, that's an example of maybe one of the scripts that we might come up with, and then we're bringing that into market, and then I'm bringing up, okay, we've run this, now let's look at the metrics. So do I have too many CEOs telling me I'm not the right person? That could be a messaging problem. That could be a data problem.
Right.
When I'm actually going through the pitch, do I have anybody that's resonating with? And if not, why not? I think Trish Bertuzzi said this in her session with you, and I completely agree. If you have somebody on a call and they say, I'm not interested, the best thing that you can ask is, hey, what about my message doesn't resonate with you?
Yeah, for sure. That's perfect.
But being able to do that as part of the data also helps us to say, okay, so with CEOs, if we come in with this pain point, it's not biting. So, we need to then go make an adjustment.
Right. So basically from the not interested, are you calculating the answers so that you have calculating their answers so that you have a response to that? Or just saying, hey, we don't even need to call this person at all because they keep saying not interested?
Good question. So the first thing that we're going to assume is that most likely there's something that needs to change with our pitch. So it's a place for us to start from a strategy perspective. It gives us the opportunity to start to do some A/B testing. And then all I'm looking at is my no interest rate changing? So comparing that side by side, and yes, I still need to look at some of the activity metrics as we mentioned earlier, but really now I've pinpointed what my goal is, and then I'm going to track it to see if it actually does that. And if not, we may still end up at the end of that campaign and say, we need to not target CEOs.
Yeah, it's like we got to stay away from that completely.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Cool. So I like how you break down the calls. So let's kind of go in a different direction. Let's talk about emails. Like, how are you using the metrics around emails?
Mm-hmm. Very good. So I'll be super upfront with you, Morgan. I'm definitely like the queen of calls. Email, I when I look at my approach, I sometimes leave that up to somebody else. I get super passionate about when I can get somebody live and when my team can as well.
Yeah, 100%.
With this, with the speed of this industry, you certainly got to be able to lean on that in some ways. So, today I think that the most important thing for us for emails is being able to track the clicks and opens. But I want to be careful with that because some folks that I've talked to in the past tend to think that I drive my activity based on whether or not someone has clicked or opened, and that's really not the point. The point is, how do I then prioritize my calls? And there's a fine line. I have I get prospecting emails as well. And I had somebody last week literally tell me like 5 times that I had clicked on, a video they sent. So, you know, and not to bash that person, I'm sure they're actually quite good, but there's definitely a balance there. There's definitely a balance there of how do I then take that information and in a humanized way, you know, if that's a word, how do I make sure that I'm leveraging that to prioritize some of that data. And the team is here at Amplify has done a great job of pushing me on that in particular. I'm definitely comfortable with failure. I think probably I like metrics the most because I think failure is a metric because you can figure out what's wrong. But when I first came to Amplify, I used kind of a process for emails that worked for me in the past. And my team kind of said, Mary, this is not working. And I had a team member say, I've got this email I really want to test, and it got like 5 times the open rate, and we're now using it across the board. So
A/B testing is super important.
Yep. Back to the metrics there. So
cool. So
how about you? Can I ask, I'm curious, is there something that you do additionally for email?
Yeah, I'm like a mad scientist when it comes to the email part. And the reason for that is because obviously
we work together really well.
Yeah. Because my whole thing is that like you can do so many things. You can A/B test everything. So on the email portion, what I like to do is what I've told my reps is that, hey, look, okay, send out an email that, personalized, templated, whatever you want to do, and test the gauge of that interest. So if it gets like 3 or 4 or 5 views or there's some clicks, then basically what we have done is we're taking that email, we transfer it into another cadence, and we call it like the video cadence. So within that video cadence, you create them a video and you send them a second email that's a video. See, and the purpose of that is because they've shown interest to your first email. So now you can kind of show them interest through this, and it kind of like cultivates and it gives them that awareness, and it gives them that message. So we A/B test our first email, we A/B test our second email, our third email, and our fourth email. We find past those 4 emails, you really don't get anyone. And we've also found that persona-based messaging is also super important as well. But the first example of the first email, awareness there, and then transferring that over to video is the most impactful.
Love it. I think it's great. You're doing video. We are kind of just on the surface of evaluating that. And at the end of the day, it's necessary. So I'm really excited about trying it.
Yeah, it's super important. So that's kind of how I see videos. Like you have to be able to A/B test it, and the metrics, we have it all there. We get to see the view rate, the response rate, the click rate, and then based on that, we take people's best emails and then we craft like a major like cadence all together. And that's like that's the way to win. You got to find out ways that you can mesh it all together and create like this big transformer email that works.
Love it.
So yeah, that's the email portion. So I guess let's kind of talk about further on the metrics of it all, right? So like what are metrics that people are looking at that are incorrect? Like what are people saying that, oh, this is a good metric, but it actually isn't a good metric?
That's a great question. I might just think about that a little bit. So I think kind of the kiss of death there is only looking at activity-based metrics. As I mentioned in the beginning, like it's certainly a crucial part of planning. You've got to be able to at least, from a volume perspective, back into where you want to go. And when I look at it individually, you have to be, I track calls for sure, volume of calls and volume of email and all of that, but it doesn't end there. And a lot of people have it end there. And there's so much to be learned from those conversation metrics and what's actually happening with your people. And the piece that I didn't mention earlier that's really important to remember there too is as a manager, going to your team and asking them like, so give me some feedback. Like, what are you hearing on your calls? They're going to think of like the last 4 calls they made. And so, introducing that, it puts some data to what actually is occurring and makes it, pretty aggressive. So I think that's my biggest just recommendation overall is that stopping at activity-based metrics means you're missing the entire picture. So yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, you definitely don't want to miss the whole picture.
Yeah, that'd be a little scary.
You don't want to do that. So kind of going further into the metrics, what do you try to hold your reps the most accountable to?
That's great. So I think that it can be very personalized. So the one thing that I've experienced in just managing the amount of people that I have is the beauty of sales at any stage is there are tactics and strategies and techniques that work for one person but will not work for another. And I think it's kind of the same with metrics. And what is cool about the conversation piece and bringing that into it is you can almost identify a plan for each SDR based on what you're seeing there. So we definitely start with activity, because without activity, if you're just not making the numbers, you're not going to get far. Yeah. When I then break down the conversation, it's very, very individualized. So an example from a conversation that I had with just one of my team members this week is actually no interest. So that's kind of a boring example since I just talked about that. But this individual is actually newer to sales, is actually one of the reasons why I love the sales industry. It comes from a background in purchasing and worked for a little bit for his dad's plumbing company. And he's got great grit, not afraid to pick up the phone. And the first thing that I noticed is pretty much half the conversation, of all the conversations he had, half of them were turning into a no interest. So for the last 3 to 4 weeks, we've had a goal that in every single one of our weekly meeting, we're rechecking that metric again and seeing where it's movement. I was excited today. I said, man, you brought it down to 28%. So that was awesome. He's also seeing more SQL, or meetings booked. So, and then, beyond that, I think it's important for SDRs to also, and as they think about their own career in sales, to keep their eye on quality level of appointments. So, we've got a process at Amplify that I'm sure is very similar to other companies where there's an acceptance line. We all kind of agree what qualified looks like, and there's an acceptance line, and the AE is responsible for communicating that back to our team. And so I look at basically that acceptance rate. So I think that's also a really important thing to keep in mind, because as you know, the SDR role is a grind. And
it is.
Yep. And it is, for, you see that extra laugh there, I heard it.
It is. I try to tell people, but it is.
It really is. And it's always, a means to an end. And one reason I just also love working in this industry is sales development is, first of all, usually the hardest area, but it's the one that's going to get you most quickly to really where you can launch off your career, whether it's in sales or anything else. So anyway, I think that when it comes to personal development, individuals who are personally invested in making sure I'm setting good meetings, that those are also resulting in revenue, they're going to be just fine after the SDR role. So that's probably the last metric that we're paying such close attention to.
Yeah, and as we kind of wrap up this interview, I want to tie this together. So we talked about what you need to do as a rep to pay attention. We talked about you as a leader, but I want to talk about, obviously, then there's always the next step for the SDRs. People become SDRs, just become account executives. The majority of people, some people go to leadership, some people go to customer success, some people don't make it at all. But looking at this, what is the most important metric that you're looking at for on an SDR standpoint, so that they can be successful as an account executive? What's been that consistent metric that they've been really good at, and you're like, that's going to make a really good account executive?
Great question. So there's probably two. Okay. First is really that acceptance rate. So it doesn't come down to volume for me. So what I'm interested in cultivating, and those that I'm seeing move on to AEs are also interested in this, is that I'm booking an appointment with a situation that's closable for my team.
Okay.
And when SDRs are doing that, they're typically using techniques and strategies that an AE is using as well.
Right.
On that call. So that's first and foremost, and I've got people that are at, not 88, 92% acceptance, that there's definitely something that they're doing right there.
Right.
The second piece is just the ability to book a sales meeting. So my mindset is always, I can't close a deal unless I can convince someone that this is even compelling enough to take a meeting.
Right.
Conversion metrics are something that I look at as a leader. That also helps me kind of see how the team, that's kind of the biggest pulse for me. That's how team members are performing.
That's email and phone, right? Conversion metrics, video, whatever.
So basically what I'm looking at there is like when we have a conversation with somebody, whether that's a conversation via email, conversation video, conversation on the phone, what's the percentage of time that I'm actually booking a meeting?
Okay, cool. Got it.
Yep. And every SDR listening to this, if you don't know that today, go into work tomorrow and make sure you know it. Because that's the one outside of all the granular stuff and the detailed stuff that I talked about with no interest and not a fit and all that jazz. Like at the end of the day, it's really that conversion. So yeah. Yeah,
I wanted everyone to get clarification on that because like, what is conversion? Like you definitely got to know that, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's like a different thing for everybody. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool, Mary. It's been awesome to dive into the metrics today and how to be successful. I think a lot of people gain a lot of value here. So I'm going to ask you the last question that I ask every single person who comes on the show. What is your one piece of advice as an SDR enters into their new role?
Make sure you know your own metrics. Maybe that's a perfect little bow on the package, isn't it? If you're an SDR and you don't know them today, my hope is that literally you go into work tomorrow and you say, I want to see these metrics. It's at a bare minimum. It is what is going to build you into a proactive leader, no matter where it is you go. So go in with that mindset of like, I'm going to be the CEO of my own quota. I'm going to go in and master my own metrics so that I can then learn from them and gain clarity about how I can crush it.
Love it. Well, Mary, it was a blast having you. Hopefully everyone understands that your metrics are important as a rep, as a leader, as you move forward in your positions wherever you go. So as I always say, guys, keep dialing and I'll see you guys soon.
Thanks a bunch. Love it.